and they're all still smiling and talking with one another and having a good time. So that's a good sign. I want to welcome all of the leaders who have joined us here today. I'm joined by our County Executive, Dan McCoy, our Chief City Auditor, Dr. Dorcia Pleers, Common Council members Sonia Frederick, Jamel Robinson, and Alfredo Ballerin, as well as our task force co-chairs, Michael Whalen and Jakeen Hoke. We're also joined by a number of our task force members, Anthony Gaddy, Chiquita Diabro, Sarah Reginelli, Faye Andrews, Caitlin O'Brien, who's here on behalf of Andrew Joyce, Matt Peter, who is a county legislator but also the chair of the Parking Authority, the president of the Parking Authority, Georgette Steffens, Pete Gannon, Tamas Groff, Jason Benitez representing the Capital Region Chamber, and Mickey Jimenez. These are just, and if I left anybody out, I apologize, but these are just a few of the people who have come together to do something really transformative here in the city of Albany. Back on March 12th of this year, the one-year anniversary of the first 2 diagnosed cases of COVID discovered in Albany County, we came together in Washington Park to celebrate the signing of the American Rescue Plan. The American Rescue Plan has helped mount a national vaccination program. It's provided stimulus checks to families across the nation and in our community. It's increased housing and nutrition assistance. It's enhanced access to safe and reliable child care and affordable health care, all very much needed relief in the face of this pandemic. And for the city of Albany, it also means $80.7 million to help replace lost revenue, pay for COVID-related expenses, and stimulate economic activity that was lost as a result of this pandemic. A small reminder, the city of Albany has accounted for at least $15 million in lost revenue as a result of this pandemic, and we need to ensure that we're continuing to provide essential city services and looking at the infrastructure that we have on hand and the improvements that we need to make in order to keep our workplace safe. A key reason why the American Rescue Plan was passed was to help ensure that America's workforce, those local employees who pick up the garbage, who provide public safety, are able to be on the job. Beyond this much-needed relief for the fiscal stress in city operations, a portion of this stimulus package will be set aside to ensure that we are able to restart Albany, reopen businesses, prevent evictions, and strengthen our not-for-profit organizations. I cannot stress this enough. This funding is vital to helping us build back better. Whether it's by increasing home ownership for our residents, living in historically underserved communities, expanding access to child care, connecting residents with vital health resources, or revitalizing city parks, streets, and other important infrastructure, we must get the investment of this $80.7 million right. Back in April, I asked 41 individuals from across multiple sectors to become part of our COVID Recovery Task Force, co-chaired by Mike Whalen and Jakeen Hoke. This diverse group of public, private, nonprofit, and institutional community leaders are affiliated with more than 108 local organizations and represent more than 12 sectors. I tasked this group with 4 objectives. First, we wanted to obtain a shared understanding of how the American Rescue Plan could help the city of Albany. We wanted to identify the needs that city residents and businesses and not-for-profits identified that were not covered by other funding sources. I also asked them to equitably and strategically maximize the resources that were available to our residents, businesses, and community organizations, and engage every sector of Albany to ensure that we get resources where they are needed in order to be able to build back. And they have done just that. I want to take a moment to thank the members of the task force for their hard work. They collectively invested thousands of human hours since April while sharing their expertise and resources to this initiative. They did this work to help ensure we are establishing clear, shared priorities that will impact the very needs of our residents that they've identified. They authored 2 surveys that garnered more than 1,000 responses. They held more than 60 direct meetings with stakeholder groups and community members. They attended 17 task force and working group meetings to solicit vital feedback to help author the report that we are unveiling today. And it lays out the key principles and priorities and recommendations to correspond with the impact areas eligible for funding under the plan. Those areas are assistance to workers and families through education, workforce, and human services, assistance to workers and families through housing, transportation, and community revitalization, small business support, supporting the public health response, and the recovery of our vital tourism, travel, arts, and hospitality sectors. So with that, I would like to welcome co-chairs Mike Whalen and Sheehan Hoke to come and share the key themes and findings and recommendations of our task force.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to everybody here who was part of this endeavor. It was really a great challenge to get so many different voices together in helping us assist this process, identify the needs, identify the challenges that the pandemic brought to the city, and then subsequently try to identify areas where we can assist. And the group behind, I remember at the beginning of the process, the mayor said, you know, we're going to have 41 members of the task force, and I thought that's just too big of a number. But as I got to work with these people and their representatives from their various organizations and heard their input and their passion for the city of Albany, it really became apparent that we had a powerful group working together. And it's sort of fitting that we stand here today with the background that we have, because this is really not only a group of wonderful people who we had working together, but behind them is the city of Albany at work trying to make us better, make our community better, our city better, and the activities behind us are sort of emblematic of that. As the mayor pointed out, we had a tremendous task at hand. 5 impact area needs assessments, 66 top challenges, 16 model programs, 32 impact strategic area recommendations, 245 programmatic recommendations, 8 guiding principles, 4 implementation principles, and then we put together this final report that we're here to celebrate today. I'd like to just identify the 8 guiding principles, because I think they speak not only to the power of the group, but the thought process that went into this challenge, this endeavor. Those being equity, collaboration, sustainability, impact, capacity, engagement, flexibility, and compliance. My 2 favorite are collaboration and sustainability, because if we do this right, and I think we've really begun in the right direction, the money that's going to be invested in Albany will be collaborative and sustainable. We'll look back in 10 years and we'll say we made a really powerful investment with some really powerful voices behind us, and for generations beyond we'll feel the impact of the money being spent here. So with that, I turn it over to my dear friend and co-chair, Sheehan Hoke.
Thank you. Thank you. So in this process, well, once it started, the mayor reached out to us, and one of the things that I asked was, can we get it done? Of course we can get it done, right? And I think that to Mike's point about 41 members on a task force, a very wide group of people ranging from all sectors represented throughout the region, it was important that we got together and do this work, not just for the community needs, listening to what they wanted to hear or what they had to, get through during COVID, but also before COVID, but also from the private sector's perspective, from the investment community. And I think our goal from all of the findings that we have listed, all of the information that we've gathered in the report is there's a lot of excitement for the city. There's a lot of projects that I think are going to be supported, not just through the COVID relief money, but also from the private sector and in the investment groups. So with that, I did want to highlight some of the other things that we took out of this, the findings, which were our ability to cross-collaborate with other, the county officials or the school departments, and really learn about what the community was missing and how the city can also support those findings and share it to those different agencies and those different departments. So whatever we didn't capture that won't come out of this budget, I think we'll share it across collaborative partners, and we'll get all those needs met. One of the big things that I took away, which was our ability to bring such a big group together and work together. You know, because this time there's been a lot of division. There's been a lot of things in our community that we all can, you know, think deeper on and work together on. And just bringing this group together, I think, really shows what the mayor was looking to accomplish with our task force. So, one, I'd like to give a round of applause to our mayor, but also to the task force. So, thank you.
It's easy to be collaborative when you get an $80 million checkbook handed to you.
So what's next? This report provides us with guiding principles that will guide the decisions that are made by the city in our budget with respect to how we allocate this funding. We are also in the process of evaluating and hiring an outside firm to help us ensure that we are in compliance with and that we have the resources to evaluate responses to requests for proposals in order to address the needs that my administration and the council together identify as the priority needs that will be laid out in our 2022 budget. We are also looking to program some of this funding this year, and we hope to be making announcements about that in the near future. The task force helped us to frame how we can think about the impact of this funding, but then also how we can evaluate the requests for funding in a very strategic way. One of the things that the task force stressed was that they believed in funding a limited number of high-impact projects that will produce substantial results rather than spreading resources broadly but thinly. And they also really wanted to focus on what our co-chairs touched on, which is that cross-collaboration with other sectors. So while the City of Albany, for example, may be able to address one of the high needs that was identified, which is the need to expand the number of child care seats by providing technical assistance and training funding, we can look to the county, who works with the state, to provide the assistance for individuals who need assistance for child care in a more impactful way. Those are the types of cross-collaborative strategic approaches that will allow us to create sustainability. Because the other thing that is very important to recognize is that while this is a significant amount of funding, it is one-time funding. And so we are sending a message to our community-based organizations and businesses and other groups who are seeking to apply for this funding in the coming months and year ahead, is to really be bold. You have to think outside the box, and it's important for you to collaborate, because we need to make sure that we're investing in sustainable enterprises. So with this one-time money, how are you going to sustain what it is you're trying to accomplish in the long term when this funding is no longer available? And I think that that's what I'm really excited about, because we created some collaborations just by who was invited to the table of the task force, and we're looking for those collaborations to continue to grow and to continue to really help to be bold and come up with ways of really collaborating and working together. And so with that, I would like to ask our county executive to come up and say a few words because, again, the county was part of this process. I know the school district couldn't be here. They're a little busy getting ready for the start of the school year. The school district received ARPA funding as well, and we want to make sure that we are working together to collaborate and to take that funding and make sure that we are expanding the possibilities rather than all trying to fund the same thing. So that's something that my partner, the county executive, understands. He's been a great partner working all through COVID, and now we're in a place where we can be celebrating our ability to really transform the city of Albany and Albany County.
Thank you, Mayor. And to put the board together, 41 people, to come up with solutions and look at things differently, it's like a jigsaw puzzle. Not every piece is going to fit that puzzle. Not every tree you plant is going to work in the neighborhood. But looking at things differently, like the mayor said, having a one approach with this money, it only comes in this year and next, to try to change the way organizations think, to change their model, to change with the times, that what they're doing today might not work, but trying something else will. That's where I give credit to Mayor Sheehan and her administration, because, you know, we've done things in government for hundreds of years, and it just doesn't work. We have to change. And as our auditor and our county legislators here know, and our aldermanic people, that it's hard to change that culture in government. You know, there is really that thing called red tape. Keep looking for it, but it's there. And I got to say, I commend her and this team for coming up with an approach that, again, is going to look at things differently and challenge. So I say stay tuned. There's going to be a lot of good things coming out of the mayor's office on top of everything else. Thank you, Mayor Sheehan, for your leadership.
Thank you. So we're going to be using these key principles, as I said, and recommendations as we lay out the priorities and craft our 2022 budget. It was really great to have such strong participation from our Common Council in the task force and in the work of the task force, and we look forward to working with them and communicating with our Common Council members and our residents regarding our initial funding priorities and investments in city services, infrastructure, and avenues for community-based organizations and businesses and other groups to access this funding. This would not have been possible without the hard work of Capitalize Albany Corporation, who answered the call when I asked them to help to manage our task force and create this report. To Sarah, Ashley, Nora, Renee, and Mike, we could not have done it without you. I know people say that sometimes, but this is literally true. Could not have done it without the team at Capitalize. So thanks to all of you. Thank you to the task force members. And we look forward to, as we said when we started this process, I think we all agreed, we want to be able to look back at the city 10 years from now and see the impact that we're having. And based on the recommendations and the framework that you've provided, I'm confident that that will be the case. So thank you all. So this is a report. It is available electronically. You can access it, and I encourage people to read it, to take a look at it, and to really dive in and be partners with us on how you can be part of building our city back. Thank you. Questions? We can take questions if you'd like, on topic. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I coordinated that. That was all planned. Yeah. So, there was a lot of conversation around equity, particularly in our historically underserved neighborhoods. Some of the challenges and the priorities that came out of the surveys that we did was access to quality, affordable child care. As we look at the challenges that our employers are facing, many of them have a shortage of employees, and they're looking for well-trained workforce. And so, you know, what we recognize is that workforce development was a priority, but we need to come alongside that and ensure that we're creating child care seats so that people can get back to work. You know, the other thing that we heard a lot about was that there's been a lot of focus on building affordable housing in the city of Albany. That's rental property, and really focusing on what can we do to create affordable home ownership in our city. And so there was a great conversation and collaboration and discussion among how the city can work with the private sector to create a pipeline that will provide for more affordable homeownership loans and opportunities to our residents. So, you know, those are just some of the priorities. As we said, you know, there are 250 program ideas in here. We're not spreading it that thinly, but we didn't want to leave anybody out. But what is laid out in this report are really, as you read it, in each of those 5 areas, there are 2 to 3 priorities that are identified within those areas, and then we'll be looking to the public and private sector to come up with ways of addressing those needs. Well, we hope to be announcing some funding, and I'm going to be working with the council on that in the next few weeks now that the report is out. We think that there's some low-hanging fruit where we can really get things started. And then we're in the midst of creating our 2022 budget. And so within that budget, ideally we would identify a certain amount of funding in each of the programmatic areas. Some of it would be spent internally. Some of these are projects that the city needs to take on, and then some of it would be available to RFP out. That definitely has been adjusted. So the revenue gap that we identified and we were required to report was about $12 million. So, you know, $12 million of this is going to cover the revenue shortfall that's directly related to COVID. The other funding is, as we look out at our projections, we're really focused on investments that the city needs to make. So not to replace budget shortfalls, but investments. You know, I'll give you an example, because this was an example that was across the state. I sat on the COVID task force, the control room for this region. And what I heard from county officials across the region was that our dispatch centers were very vulnerable because of the close proximity of how dispatchers sit in those facilities and how small they are. It really created some challenges where there were concerns that you could have an entire dispatch center where everybody was either out with COVID or in quarantine. So we're looking at investing in and updating our dispatch center so that we don't have this type of situation if there's a pandemic in the future. So that's not a budget shortfall, but that is internal funding addressing COVID. So right now, you know, we've asked our department heads to tell us what they'd like to do with the COVID funding. Not surprising. You know, they have lots of ideas. So I think the total last time I looked was like $120 million. But, you know, we need to work with the council to whittle down what we want to do internally, because we want to get this funding out into the community as well. Okay, thank you.